Yes, one of the things I love about being a philosopher is we get to ask and explore these big questions of life all the time. And I get paid to do it, so that's pretty cool. This question, who am I? This question of identity is one of the driving questions of our day today. And if you think about it, there's actually a question beneath that question as well, right? And the question is, who gets to name me, right? Do I get to name myself? And that's a sort of popular trope in the culture. Be all that you can be. Discover your true self. If we follow the Disney model, follow your heart or something like that. Or can I only be named by another? This is one of the deep questions. And that question, what's interesting about that, the answer to that question depends on what kind of world we find ourselves in. So it's actually a question in metaphysics. It's about the nature of reality. Right? Who gets to name us, and how do I discover my true name? And so what I want to do, since we've only got 8 to 10 minutes, is I'm going to make a bunch of assertions. And that's a little uncomfortable for a philosopher because I want to back them up, but at least we can get started. I want to give you kind of a framework for making sense of this question. How do I discover my true self? Okay? So here you go. I'm just going to give you 5 claims by way of an answer to this. So claim number 1 should be up there on the screen. Next slide. The first claim is actually a claim about us as humans. Okay? And it's kind of a bold claim, if you think about it. You cannot answer the question of identity until you answer the question of story, right? Our identity is wrapped up in the story of our lives. I love one philosopher, Alistair MacIntyre, wrote a book called After Virtue, but in there he said, you cannot understand what you ought to do until you first understand of which story you are a part, right? Really provocative. Another philosopher, let's go to the next slide, Hannah Arendt, in her book, The Human Condition, she says, the moment that we want to say who somebody is, our very vocabulary leads us astray into saying what he is, right? And then she goes on in that second quote, if you can see it at the bottom, she says, who somebody is or was, we can know only by knowing the story of which he himself is the hero. His biography. In other words, everything else we know of him, including the work we may have produced and left behind, he may have produced and left behind, tells us only what he is or was. So discover the story that you inhabit, and you find yourself too. Okay, that's claim number 1. It's a claim about us. Philosophers, sociologists, historians, literary critics would make the claim that we are narratival animals. C.S. Lewis said that we are poetical animals, and this is the idea that we live according to stories. Okay? That's the first claim. Second claim, next slide, is a claim about the universe. Okay? Another bold claim, claim 2. To correctly answer the question of identity, to find your authentic self, you must locate your life in the true story of the world. Okay? So this is a claim about the universe. And the claim behind this is that the universe is structured like an ongoing story. It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's headed somewhere, like any good story. And the reality is, though, there's all these competing stories out there that are vying for our attention, that are seeking our allegiance. And of course, there's chief storytellers all over culture, right? And these chief storytellers are shouting or whispering, depending on their mood, follow me, and you'll find your authentic self. You'll find your meaning, your purpose. You can insert Darth Vader voice, your destiny, right? I don't know. But the problem is many stories conflict with each other, right? They can't all be true because they contradict each other. And this leads to my next claim. How do we discover, of all the competing stories, the true story of the world? And my next claim, claim 3, there on the screen, is actually a claim about, it's a claim about possibilities, and it's a claim about posture, okay? This is about how do we go about discovering the true story of the world. And so my claim is that we need to embark on a journey of discovery, right? And that journey will require of us wisdom and courage and love and openness to transcendence, right? And so one of the things that I think we sometimes need to reset is just to consider the possibility that God is better than you think, and that Jesus is better than you've been told, right? Just to consider the mere possibility, or to consider the mere possibility that there might be something beyond this mundane world that is responsible for it and that exists. Now, just to sort of back up and make good on this third claim, I want to share a story about hiking with my son, Travis. If we go to the next slide there. This is Travis, our third child, when he was 16. So he's 19 now. He's a freshman in college. But when he was 16, we went to Colorado, and we tried to summit two 14,000 footers in one day, in one hike. And that was mistake number one. Mistake number two is I'm getting old and it's hard. So I'll just tell you a little bit about this. So we're in the Colorado Mountains in the Sangre de Cristo Range, and the two summits were called Challenger Point and Kit Carson Peak. And basically, we got up at like 2:45 in the morning, and we hit the trailhead, and we hiked for a number of hours in the dark, and I'm yelling switchback every turn as we're ascending because I'm thinking there's like a bobcat following us or something, just to, I don't know, it's probably me. But finally, about 6 o'clock, actually go back to the slide before this, about 6 a.m. in the morning, the sun rises, and there in the distance, we see the two peaks staring at us, and it was beautiful, it was majestic. The picture on your right there is about 6:30 in the morning. We sat and had some stale donut holes and stared at, we're sitting at this high altitude lake here and just enjoying the beauty of the morning. Hiked around that lake, and then you begin about a mile ascent, and it's like a pretty steep incline there to get to the summit of the first one. And that day there were only 6 people on the mountain: my son, Travis, and then 2 couples. And as you kind of begin the ascent, it's covered in snow. And one couple went to the left, and they began to make their way up a path of scree, which is basically loose rocks, and you could see a clear path all the way to the summit. And the other couple went to the right, which is where you're actually supposed to go, because that's where the trail is, but it was covered in snow. And so we decided to follow the couple to the right, and we went to where the path was. And we hiked for a couple hours, and we're getting probably within a quarter mile of the summit. We could see it, but the snow just got too deep, and it just got too dangerous. And we realized at that moment that we weren't going to not only summit 2, we weren't even going to summit 1 of these 14,000 footers. And so we turned back, and you can go to the next slide. You can kind of see the snow on the one picture here. If you go to the right, it just becomes impassable. And so that's actually as far as we got right there in that picture. And so we had to turn back. And about 5 hours later, we were back at our hotel at the base of the mountain and, tired but thankful for the shared experience. Now, I actually don't consider that time with my son, Travis, as a loss. In fact, we had a shared experience. We have unfinished business with those mountains. We hope to get back to it. But compelled by the love of adventure and the love of each other and sustained by courage when that hike got harrowing and difficult, and then guided, and here's the key, guided by wisdom, right, and humility and openness to reality, we turned back, right? We realized that we needed to turn around. And of course, we have a bond of friendship and memories that will hopefully nourish us in the journeys ahead. And it's these same basic characteristics that we experienced in that hike that we need in this sort of journey of life that we're all on, right? This quest to discover the true name. We need love, we need humility, we need wisdom, but we need openness. Openness to reality, openness to transcendence. And so the proposal with this claim is that we would have a posture of being open to the possibility that God actually exists, or open to the possibility that God is better than you've been told, right? Okay, so that was claim 3, right? Okay, claim 4. Claim 4 is a claim about the evidence for God. Now, I think that the evidence for God is, I want to say 2 things. It's widely available, and it's easily resistible. What I mean by that is the evidence for God, I think, is everywhere, right? Because, as it turns out, we live in a world created by God, and I think there's signs everywhere. But it's easily resistible in this sense. It needs to be interpreted, right? It needs to be rightly understood, and that takes effort, and that takes time. But my proposal is that these clues function kind of like stones. So on that hike with Travis, as we were getting towards the summit, there were cairns. You guys know what cairns are? They're these stacks of stones that are stacked up, and they guide your way as you journey toward the summit. And I believe that there are clues that reveal the true story of the world that are everywhere in creation, and they function like these cairns if faithfully followed. And so, in fact, in this book that I just wrote and released 2 months ago, A Good and True Story, I explore 11 of those clues, those stones that I think especially cry out, that God exists. So, for example, the next slide, the universe itself is a clue that cries out for explanation. And the middle picture there is about life itself, and the picture on the other side is about the diversity of life. These are clues. And in the book, I consider others: meaning, happiness, morality, love, beauty, religion, and even pain. All of these things are clues that I think beckon us and point to the true story of the world. I've got 5 seconds, so let me tell you the fifth and final claim. What I've discovered, no surprise, Christianity is the true story of the world, and it's a good story. And as it turns out, in discovering the true story of the world, Christianity, which is both good and true, we also learn that we can't name ourselves, right? That we must be named by another. And in the Christian story, we find out that our true name is actually beloved. Thank you.